change the rules to go down to 51 votes for all legislation. Do you think that's a good idea?
Well, that's an argument he's made before, John. I think it's something that if the president wants to have that conversation with our members, we can have that discussion. But obviously, that has some pretty serious ramifications. The one thing I will point out, however, is that the health care bill, because it's done through the budget reconciliation procedure here in the Senate, only requires 51 votes. We can do health care reform, insurance reform at 51 votes. We could do tax reform at 51 votes. So there isn't all these things, the major things that the president and his team want to get done on their agenda can already be accomplished at 51.
Do you think he understands that?
Well, I think he understands that, but I think he also, there are other issues that he wants to address, and he believes that anything that, even parts of health care reform which don't fit into the budget reconciliation process that take 60 votes, he wants to get those done, and he wants to get them done at 51, and we get that.
Understood.
We're frustrated too.
Just to be clear, on the record here, you do not support getting rid of the legislative filibuster. You do not support going down to 51 votes for all legislation, correct?
I don't. There are some reforms I think that we could make that would enable things to work better here, but doing away with the legislative filibuster is not one of them.
Okay, let me move on to health care. How big of a setback was it overnight when those two Republican senators, Mike Lee and Jerry Moran, announced their opposition to the current bill? How big of a setback is it in your efforts to repeal and replace Obamacare?
It requires obviously now a change of plan, and we've got to pivot now to another strategy, and I think that Senator McConnell has laid out a plan now to offer up a full repeal, which is something that we voted on 2 years ago. Every Republican senator except for one voted for that, and so that will now become the base that we'll debate in the Senate. But it really does come down to, John, it's a function of math. You either have the votes or you don't, and at this point, the proposal that's out there, which I think addresses the concerns everybody has about Obamacare in terms of stabilizing markets and making health insurance more affordable, doing away with the individual mandate, the job-killing employer mandate, all those things are in this bill, but at this point at least doesn't have the necessary 50 votes that would allow us to proceed.
Back in February, on the idea of repeal and delay or repeal only, you said we got to have some, at least elements in place to maintain stability in the market, some continuity. So you were suggesting back in February you needed some idea of what to replace it with rather than delay. And then, back in 2015 when you guys passed repeal only, the CBO did score that. And said upwards of 18 or 19 million people, fewer people would have health care in 1 year. 10 years out it would be 20 million plus. Does any of that concern you?
That's right, John. I have said those things, and I believe that. I think that we have to have in place at least a plan that provides a transition in order for us to get to a point where we can have a more fulsome discussion about what to replace it with. And the bill that we did vote on in 2015 did include a 2-year transition. In other words, it wouldn't, we would allow sort of a 2-year period for us to come up with that replacement plan. So that would be essentially what we would have up on the floor and be voting on again, so that we ensure that there's no disruption in the marketplace and that insurers can continue to put out their estimates for the upcoming year and maintain that stability in the marketplace that we all want to see.
If I can, I want to ask one question on the Russia investigation, because the Wall Street Journal wrote an editorial. We're talking about the Wall Street Journal here, no bastion of liberalism. I think you can agree. The Journal says it's sick and tired, really, of how the White House is handling it. And the Journal suggested in an editorial, release everything to the public instead of the inevitable leaks. That means every meeting with any Russian or any American with Russian business ties, every phone call or email, every Trump business relationship with the Russians going back years. This should include every relevant part of Mr. Trump's tax returns, which the president will resist, but Mr. Mueller is sure to seek anyway. Your reaction to what the Journal's asking for?
Well, first off, I think that the American people do deserve a full explanation of what happened in all these various meetings. I think that the Intelligence Committee here in the Senate is looking into that. The Mueller special counsel is looking into that. I think we're going to get those answers in due time. But I think the more is better. I mean, to me, the administration is served by getting everything out there and being as transparent as they possibly can, because this issue, in order for it to go away, I think that's the best way to just cleanse it and get it out there and let the American people decide. And
more
I think, frankly, more
transparency
is good. Yeah, absolutely.
More transparent than they are now?
Well, I mean, I think that there's been a reluctance, for whatever reason, I think, by the administration in some cases to get all the information out there. And I